Hello and welcome back to another tasty Blender tutorial. Today, in honor of 4th of July, we'll be looking at how to create sparks with the use of the particle system. So I'll just guide you through the process. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I always offer a free resource file with every tutorial that I make. This one is also gonna be available on my GUMROAD. So let's get into it. So starting off, I'm gonna open Blender 2.93. And we're going to create first the actual, let's say, firework. It's going to be just Shift A. I'm going to add a cylinder like so, S, and then Shift Z, and let's say scale it like that. I'm going to press Tab to go into edit mode. Then I'm going to select the top loop by pressing Shift Alt and then right click in my case, because I'm using the previous 2.79 convention. I'm just selecting the top loop. I to inset, and I just move my mouse towards the center, somewhere around there, so I get this nice pop. Then I press I again, Control, and then drag my mouse down, so I have this sort of walled off area. Let me scroll in, press I again, more towards the center, and then press I again and pull it down. This is just going to be a very simple firework. I want to create the emitter as well, so instead of just going through adding a circle, whatever, I'm just going to press Shift D to duplicate this, and I'm going to press S to scale it down slightly, GZ to move it up, and then I'm going to press P and separate by loose parts. Or I can also do selection. In this case, I have actually separated these two objects. Shift Control Alt C, origin to geometry. Otherwise, you can also find it in object, set origin, and then origin to geometry. So it's nice and centered. And then Control A to reset the scale, and as well Control A to reset the scale of our firework. So let me rename this. So the first cylinder is going to be firework, and the second one is going to be the emitter. Last thing we need to create is Shift A, add a cube. I'm going to move it on the X, S, Shift Z again. So I have this nice elongated shape. S, Z, like that. Control A to reset the scale, and then Control 2 to add a subdivision of 2. I've also pressed W in my case to shade smooth. You can also search it in your search function. I'm just going to work a bit more on the firework. So what I'm going to do is just add a bevel and a subdivision surface like so. Press W to shade smooth. And then I'm just going to work the corners by increasing the segments and lowering the amount of beveling, let's say closer to 0. And I can then also increase the number of levels in the viewport like that. So I have a nice clean cut. I'm just going to disable the modifiers for now in the viewport, like so. And I'm also going to hide the firework for a second. So now I can start on my actual sparks. So we'll be using the particle system here on the right. So having my emitter selected, I'm going to press plus, add a particle system, and just press Alt A or space in other conventions cases, so I can play my animation. In the bottom corner, I'll change the end of the animation to be a bit quicker, sort of like 70 frames, but you can adjust it to whatever you like. You'll see also why, because it is dependent, the explosiveness of your particles, on the actual frame start and end of your emission. First, let's go to render, and then render as object, and then instance the object. So to choose the eyedropper object and click on the cube. So this is actually going to instantiate those cubes. We can increase the scale slightly. So in my case, it's going to be 0.160. And the scale randomness to, let's say, 0.6 or 0.7. Should be fine. We can also click this hide emitter, or rather show emitter. So the emitter is going to be hidden. So first of all, we need to take care of two things. It's going to be the end of the animation. So notice how many particles are being expelled the lower the end of the actual emission is. So they come out much quicker and much thicker. Lifetime, we can drop it, let's say, to 35, something like that. So you can see that they start disappearing. And we're also going to use lifetime randomness, meaning that each particle dies at a random interval of time. So 30 up to 35. Velocity is the next big one. So I'm going to click on velocity and increase the normal So it starts shooting up. Now this is a bit closer to a firework, but still not very fireworky. So we still need to work a bit on it. Thankfully, there's a very easy way of achieving a fairly decent look by clicking on physics, and instead of Newtonian, click on fluid. So here you can see everything is just freaking out, everything is just exploding. So what we can do is basically decrease the number of these particles so they start to be emitted a bit more naturally. I can also click on rotation and choose dynamic rotation so that they distribute more realistically. But you might have noticed it screwed up the initial rotation. So I'm just going to down to render and click object rotation and rotate it on the y-axis on 90 degrees. And now you can see that they're starting to look a bit more like sparks. We can increase the normal to make the bottom lip a bit more enunciated, but there's plenty of other settings to play with, namely the stiffness and the viscosity. Now, watch what happens when I increase the stiffness. So everything starts to crackle and pop. So if this is a type of, let's say, animation type that you're going for, like just bump the stiffness. If you lower the stiffness to 0, everything is much more fluid, as you can see. So it's like those palm-like, or what are they called? Just the fountain type fireworks. So let's add a stiffness of 2. So we want just a bit of chaos. And viscosity is another interesting one. So if we bump it up, you can see that they start to flow like a sort of firefly fireworks. And if we drop the viscosity, they're much more homogeneous. So I kind of like the maximum viscosity. And another thing is the buoyancy. So if you increase the buoyancy, they start to really fly up. So this is if you want a flary, more spread out type of firework. In my case, I'm just going to turn it like that. So we can still adjust a couple of parameters, maybe make them just a bit longer. So the end is going to be at 60 and the lifetime is going to be just a bit longer. Let's say 45. So you can see that they start to aggregate at the top. So again, we can go down, increase the stiffness maybe. So this creates those firefly type of fireworks. Maybe decrease the viscosity so everything is less homogeneous and explodes in a different manner, sort of like that. And basically that's it. These are the settings that you can use to actually manipulate the type of firework that you want. Now, for example, like I said, this is not like a typical rocket, so this would be more of a crackle type of thing. So this doesn't really suit the firework at hand. So what I want to do is just increase, let's say, the normal to 11, something like that. And now I want to play with my stiffness settings and my viscosity, so it basically becomes like a fountain. So that's what I'm doing right now. I want to do a 0 stiffness and let's say 1, 2 viscosity. You can also increase it to see how much of that homogeneity you can just keep up with. Let's increase the normal and let's make it maybe a bit faster. So that's going to give you an idea of how these can just start moving around. So we can increase or decrease the number. Main thing to notice here is that the more you go, the more they're going to start to freak out. So you want to hit the sweet spot where they don't interlope on each other. So we can go up, let's say, to 1300 almost, something like that. So that's like a really cool one. Let's increase the end of the simulation to 100. Where they basically come up, explode, and then disappear, come up, explode, and disappear. So basically, you have like a full-on loop. Now, I'm not going to texture the actual firework for now. I'm just going to show you a cool, let's say, texturing trick for the spark over here, which is going to be the last thing we'll be doing here. So I'm going to go shader, editor. Let me stop the simulation for a second. And I'm just going to add a material in my material tab. And this material is going to be created by first deleting the principal BSDF by pressing X, Shift A, and we're going to need a emission shader. So I'm going to put it here. Shift A mix shader, put it here, and Shift A diffuse, Shift A Fresnel or Fresnel, and then Shift A black body. We connect the black body color to the color of the emission. The emission is going to be in the bottom shader socket, the diffuse is going to be in the top, the mix shader connected to the surface, and the factorial to the factorial input, like so. What we get here, if we go into our rendered view, is basically we can distribute the emission on the actual edges of our spark. One cool trick you can do is actually get this type of light. So you have an index of refraction of 0.8. Let's say increase the temperature to something a bit more yellow, say to 2500, something around there, and increase the strength to, let's say, 20. So it's like iridescent almost. And then you can also play with the diffuse, so you can make it a bit more yellow or a bit more red. So you try to actually manipulate the color inside as well. And bam, you've got yourself a nice little firework right there. Let me switch to cycles just for a second to the GPU compute so we can see how they behave. And yep. So you can also, again, lower down your temperature, find it in these settings that you're used to, a more yellowy, a more reddish type of tint. So find something that will work for your scene or for the firework in question. In this case, you can have just a simple sparkling thing. Before we end, one last thing that I forgot to mention, under your cache, you need to bake your system. So choose your emitter or particle system, go under bake, and then after you have baked this setting, it means that now if you press, let's say, F12 and you want to render it out, it's going to render it out correctly. So it's not going to be any missing frames. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something new. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, I offer a free resource video with every tutorial that I make. So make sure to also check for that in the description. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.